So we have a call to order.
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Rob,
Here.
John,
Here.
have a moment of silence. Item number 4 on the agenda. Consider approving the agenda for tonight. Everybody in favor?
Second.
Yeah, you're just going to make note that you're not going to take action on the items number 7.2 and 9.2
Okay.
as part of that.
So for the record, we're not going to take action on 7.2 and 9.2 because the presenters are not present, right?
Right. And then just take a vote.
The vote. We're voting for tonight's agenda approved. In favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. All right, so we're going to do public comment first.
Yeah, so public comment for agenda items only.
Okay. So is there any public comment? No? Okay. So we'll move on to the minutes. Do we approve the minutes from the July 8th meeting?
Yeah, I approve.
Approve? Approve? All right, everybody approved? All right,
We have to vote on that too.
we just did, right? We vote on them.
You should have a motion and a second, just and then a formal vote. So I believe John made the motion. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'll motion it, they second it, or they motion it.
Anybody can motion.
Okay,
And then just somebody from your group would also, from the board would also second. And then you would take, if you had any discussion, and then you would have a vote.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go. Thanks, Carol. All right, let's see. So the presentation will move to item number 7, Eagle Scout project presentation from Luke Impriano, the tree planting along Goshen Trail.
Okay. Hello, I'm Luke Impriano, and I'm a Boy Scout in Troop 315, and I am currently working on my rank of Eagle Scout. One of my requirements to become an Eagle Scout is to do an Eagle Scout project. And for my Eagle Scout project, I want to plant 10 trees along the Goshen walking trail. I've chosen this project because I like being in nature. I've seen that the Goshen Trail is in need of new trees, and I know that I can help. This project will be beneficial because the trees will provide shade and beauty to the trail, as well as replace the ash trees that were killed by the emerald ash borers a few years ago. I've chosen this spot because it's a perfect place for the trees to grow. There's plenty of sunlight, there's not too much water, the ground is stable, and there's plenty of room for the trees to grow horizontally and vertically. And I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to help the environment and keep our community beautiful. And if there's any questions you have.
Any questions?
What kind of trees are you planting?
I've asked for a list, and I still have to get the list.
George Sharrett's Director of Public Works. So I'm working with Luke. We actually had a list ready to go, and predominantly what we try to do is utilize trees that we have in storage in a tree nursery. They're bare root trees that come from Pennsylvania Horticultural Society. We always make sure in the past, when we have ordered trees from them, that they are native trees or designated that way. And again, before this commission was founded, I think you're going to be taking over, those opportunities for getting trees through PHS and some of those things. But again, we've always tried to keep a stock of trees in mind. When Luke first came to the township to do a project, he kind of was pointed toward Park and Rec because it was open-ended what he was going to do. He then narrowed down that he wanted to do a tree planting project. So Park and Rec worked with EAC at the time, and now finally we've gotten over to where he really needs to be, which is the tree commission. At the time, EAC had given a recommendation of trees that we had in stock, and just so you know, 3 of them were black gum trees. 3 of them were elm trees that were good trees identified for the area. The problem was the 3 elm trees, I went and checked them a week and a half ago, and they were healthy 2 weeks ago. And then something attacked the leaves, and the leaves have skeletonized. I mean, it's just down to the veins.
That's normal.
Yeah, I suspect the trees are still healthy themselves. I just don't know if they're the right trees to now plant during this project. Well, I mean, they're not going to look good. They're probably the right tree for the right place. So I just wanted to ask your thoughts on that with the 3 elm trees. Unfortunately, the gum trees are dead. They were smaller container trees, and they didn't make it. So I do have a listing that the EAC had recommended. I can share them with you and get your thoughts on them. First, I'd like to know if the elm trees seem like good choices, even though the leaves have been hammered.
I like them.
Yeah, I like them.
I like them.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine.
Okay, then if you don't mind, I'll just throw out some of what the EAC had thought of and see what you think about it. The EAC had gotten some 5-gallon container trees that they were using in another project, and they were now looking for a home for them. And so they had thrown these out as possibilities. They had a Sweet Bay magnolia. They've got 2 scarlet oaks and 1 white oak, as well as 1 black cherry. So I'll start with them and get your thoughts on what you think about those. Again, Sweet Bay magnolia, a scarlet oak,
So 2 scarlet.
2 scarlet oaks, 1 white oak,
How many Sweet Bay magnolias?
just one,
Just one?
and then 1 black cherry, which is a smaller one. So I'll start with them because they're containers and get your thoughts on them.
They're all good.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah,
good to me.
fabulous.
Great, great. So then some of the bare root trees that are in the Public Works Nursery that were also under consideration. A serviceberry. We have 3 Winter King green hawthorns. There's 2 Robin Hill pink apple serviceberries. There's a seedless Kentucky coffee tree. I'll start with them because they were the ones that the EAC had thought about. Now, the coffee tree is not on the list that the Street Tree Commission had given consideration to as a recommended tree. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
It's native, it's big, it would be fine. You said it's fruitless?
Yeah, it's a seedless, and I know its salt tolerance is good, which is good right along, Goshen Road.
If anything for that, I would say, don't put it between the trail and the road. Because sometimes some of these things are supposedly seedless, sort of revert back to what they want to be. And you don't want to have those pods falling in the street. So you might want to put that more between the walkway and the woods. Then if it does get pods and it falls on the walkway or in the woods, no problem.
Right, that makes sense. That makes sense. Any thoughts on the other trees?
The serviceberry and the Winter King hawthorns are all smaller trees.
Yeah.
So they might be good between the path and the road, sort of. They'll act more as a little bit as a visual screen because they tend to be smaller and maybe not much, but a little bit of sound resistance, sound barrier.
Right. As you know, I mean, the Goshen Trail used to have 70 ash trees along it, and it's been hammered. Although we have been treating some of those trees, some didn't survive anyway, and a fair number of them are coming down. So When we were considering a long-term planning plan, it was that we try to use smaller trees so that I don't have to keep bringing in cranes every time I have to take down an ash tree. So some of those smaller trees were thought of as being maybe wise to put in that area.
Mhm.
So the bigger trees give more shade.
Yeah, and that's why we were thinking that the oaks and the Kentucky coffee tree would be fair to have some in there. I just didn't want all trees that were going to be, 80 feet tall.
You said that the first group of trees were all containerized. What shape are these? What condition are these guys?
So they're good. They're new because they only were purchased by the EAC back for their native plant garden.
But
so-
they're containerized also.
They're containerized
Okay.
also, yeah. So now we're looking like 5 containerized and probably 5 bare root.
And they're going in the ground now or when?
When would you be looking to do your project?
September 25th, when I'm thinking about starting to plant the trees.
Okay,
That's good.
sounds good.
And you'll be able to water them at least once after they're planted.
Yes, so we'll use the public works truck and we'll get over there and get them watered. Similar to, there had been a earlier tree planting along the Goshen Trail, and we have been watering that. We put gator bags on after watering that. These, before the winter, we should only need to water a few times
Yeah.
before they
Right.
calm down for the winter.
Okay. All right. You want to vote? All in favor?
I think we make a motion.
We make a motion.
I think we make a motion to.
So you'll take action under 9.1, but because 7.2 didn't happen, you can just jump to 9.1 and take that action.
Okay, so we don't have to call for a vote or make a motion or anything?
No, that's
Oh,
when you
that
will
was just
do
the
it.
presentation. Okay, I
Yeah,
see.
so this was his presentation,
Got it.
and then under new business will be, the first item is there for you
Got
to
it.
approve his project and the planting of the trees. And it'll be the trees that you agreed to this evening
Okay.
with Mr. Sherritt's.
Okay, so we'll consider approving the Eagle Scout project for tree planting along Goshen Road.
You make the motion.
Yeah, we have, say a motion.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank you.
the motion granted.
Yeah, thank you.
Right,
Yep, thank
terrific.
you.
You can sign up.
You're welcome. And so we'll move on to item 9.3. Consider approval of removal of 5 trees from the township property at Sawmill Road.
So Mr. Hasbach is not here this evening, but he and George Sherritt, our Public Works Director, went out to this particular property. In case you're not familiar with where the property is, it's right at the corner of 252 and Sawmill. There used to be a house on this property. It's between Sawmill and Aspen is the area. If you, to give you another kind of landmark, we have the water tower, we have the Knights of Columbus Hall. We have Aspen Road. We have Aspen Road. There's actually a piece of property that has been the township's. It was given as part of the development. And then there was a piece of property that's about 2.5, 3 acres right at the corner of Sawmill and 252 there. It would be the southeast corner of 252 if you're going north. And so it'd be right there as you're going, and it'd be right off to your left. It's a pretty heavily treed lot. There are 5 trees that kind of sit right along the property boundary. They're on the township's property, but is the best way to say they're leaning, George, but they're leaning towards the house that's next door. And so George, like I said, met with John Hasbach out at the property. They went through, they've looked at it. It's actually a pretty large project. I think it's going to cost the township about $8,000 to take these trees down. So they're pretty good sized trees. We're going to have to bring a crane in. George, do you have any other additional information on that?
Just that it had started, the neighbor had been concerned about the trees, and it was more the branches leaning over they were worried about, which isn't normally something that would be our responsibility to deal with a property line like that. But out of caution, we brought the arborist out, and he identified of all the trees, there were 5 that were concerning, and he recommended them coming down. That's how we got to this point.
Okay.
And so if you'll remember, within the ordinance, you are given the responsibility of all the trees on township property.
Mhm.
And so before we can take action and just do it, unless it's an emergency, we have to bring it back to you
Okay.
before we do.
Now, would we open for public comment on that or no? Just,
Well,
there's nobody here for it.
I mean, you can if you want to, but you open for public comment before we started the meeting for any items on the agenda.
Okay.
But if you feel like you want to open for public comment, there is somebody here. I don't know if she doesn't want to say anything. So I think you're fine not to do that.
Right. No, I agree. If there are hazards, they have to come down. So, all right. So we will motion.
I make a motion that we take down the 5 trees as recommended by the township arborist.
Second.
Second. All right. Motion granted. All right. That's granted. That's 9. We'll move on to 9.4.
For 9.4, if you could just go ahead and pull up the report for me. Can you blow that up at all, or is that probably as big as you can get? There you go. This report basically just gives an overview. I hope you had a chance to look at it before on the agenda. It's because it's really small print. And this is what let me say it again, Chester Ridley Crum Creek Watershed has done in the township. I think goes back to 2012, just so that you know what's happened in the area. The reason I brought this to your attention is that one of the areas on here, is it the first one that's tree plantings? Yes. The very first column is tree plantings. So they just wanted you to be aware of that going forward. Before any action would take place, they would need to come before you and let you know that they're doing that. But you can see that they've had a pretty steady, I think it's 1, 2, 3. Most of the, I think 3 of the areas, or 2 of the areas were not on our property. They were actually at Garrett Williamson. And also, I believe at Episcopal Academy. The other ones are ours or indirectly the townships, the Little League Fields and Drexel Lodge. And so I just wanted you to be aware because they occasionally come before us. I just wanted you to see what they've done.
Can you send us a copy of that?
It was part of your agenda that went out to you. It was attached.
Sorry.
So you should have it that way. I can send it to you in addition if you want it.
Well,
But,
if it's in there, I suppose I could find it.
okay, if you're having trouble getting it, we can get it to you.
All right.
Okay, but I just wanted you to, that was the big thing that I wanted you to be able to see was just what we had there. And it goes through and talks about what they did everywhere, but that's the Newtown Township.
All right.
All right,
Yep. So do we,
No action on
No
it?
there's no action. I just wanted it going forward. I just want to make sure that you're in agreement that any work they do, I would be bringing before you before they actually do it
Okay.
on township property. And because I need to make sure they understand, they just can't plan it. They have to talk to us ahead of time.
Okay.
got it. Okay. So we will move to item 9.5.
And if I can, I'm going to actually ask that we put this one on hold for the moment. We have a couple other things, and I've invited Rich, our solicitor, to be here tonight to actually address 10.1. If we go long on 10.1, I want to make sure we have time, not make him come back another night.
Sure.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So we're going to drop to 10.1 or we're going to go to 9?
If we can handle 9.6 and then.
9.6, okay.
I'm gonna ask if we can handle 9.7, and then I can let George go home. And then
Okay,
we'll spend the rest of the night, or as much time as we need to with Rich.
Okay, so let's drop to 9.6. Select the new meeting date for the November meeting and approve advertisement.
So, we did not, when we scheduled the November meeting, I'm gonna get back to my calendar here. What I failed to look at was that in November, your meeting falls on the 11th of November, which is a holiday. It's Veterans Day, and the township is closed. And so we wouldn't be able to have a meeting that night. So I wanted to work with you to set when we would have that meeting, because we only meet every other month as it is at this point going forward. And so I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get we didn't cancel it because of what it was. So the options that are available to us is we could move it to the night before and do it on Wednesday the 10th, or we could move it, we would have to move it out until December, or we could do the 30th. We could do December 9th or the 30th of November.
I'm good with the 10th of November.
10th of November works.
10th of November works.
I work.
Work?
I'm good.
Okay.
Will it be available by Zoom like this one is? Because
It
I'll be
is.
out of town. But
Yeah.
I can attend by Zoom.
That's fine. We can do that. Any meeting that we do going forward will always be done via Zoom, because we're recording it, sending it out. So
Anyway.
you could attend that way if you wish to.
Okay.
Great. Do we need to motion that or are we okay?
I need a motion for at least moving the meeting. The advertising I actually will have to do from the Board of Supervisors,
Okay,
but I do need the motion from you that you want it for that date.
okay, so we motion to move the date to November 10th. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion granted. And we will move to 9.7.
So 9.7, we have, in the past, the township has applied to get bare root trees. I'm going to let George come forward and talk about it. He's really been the one that's headed this up every year. But based on the way the ordinance is written, we believe that it needs to come before you as part of the process, because we're purchasing trees typically that are planted on township property. And so, George. if you would.
Sure. So for the last number of years, Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring, gives us the opportunity to purchase bare root trees. And again, we have always in the past selected native trees. You've seen them. I mean, they're substantial trees. They're not small trees when they come in. In the past, either the Environmental Advisory Council or sometimes just the township through our office has found places where trees could get planted for a planting project at those times of the year. Other times we've put them into a tree nursery that we maintain on the Public Works yard. We currently have about 30 or 40 bare root trees in that tree nursery. They're in a compost sawdust mixture, so they've very successfully come back out again when it's time for planting, as long as you do it at the right time of year. And by the way, I will get the Shade Tree Commission an inventory of what those trees are. You should be aware of what they are, because you would direct in the future where they would be, going and getting planted, I would think. So we'll get that to you.
We'd like to visit it too.
Oh, I would love to take you there.
Yeah.
We can schedule that. We could either schedule that individually when you're available, or if it is a group, we could just put it on as an agenda item and walk out back one time.
Sure.
So the opportunity came again from Pennsylvania Horticultural Society to order another batch. And generally you can get 10 to 15 trees at a very reasonable price, as you probably saw in the attachment. Maybe if they would normally go for 100 or 150, we could get them for maybe about $50 a piece. So we usually take advantage. We'll put them in the inventory or do a planning project. But now it's under your purview. And that's good because, you know, again, before it may have been who was taking charge of it and who was doing this and that. Now it comes under your purview. So my question to Steve was, should we place an order now? Is there a project where the Shade Tree Commission would like to see some trees planted? You know, again, how do we move forward with it? You know, do we just get some for, you know, for stock and put them in the storage for later use? What's your pleasure? What's your thoughts on it?
George, before they debate that a little bit, I wanted to, I believe, and if I'm mistaken, I need you to clarify for me. Some of the trees that are there, obviously we talked about being used by the Eagle Scout project. Some of the other trees that are in there, I believe, are going to be used across the street. Is that correct?
So originally trees were going to be used across the street. The last that I saw, it didn't look like that was going to take
okay.
place.
Well, then I'm wrong.
Yeah,
So-
no, it's fine. What I send to you as an inventory will have removed from them what Luke is going to use, and will have removed from them if they do use any across the street, so that we're not double counting them.
So real quick, across the street, when I say across the street, I'm talking right straight across Ellis Avenue here. That way, on the other side of the library, there's that open lot. You call the lot, we call the park. And so, but EAC, Environmental Advisory Council, has a project in the middle of October, is that correct?
That is correct.
That they're going to be planting about 130 plants in that area. Predominantly, I think there's about 60 trees, and the rest of them are shrubs as part of a stormwater management technique, as well as replenishing, if I get it right, well, over 20
Ash trees.
ash trees that we've lost at that site over the last 4 or 5 years. The idea, most of what's being planted there is fairly small. What do they call them? It's
like the 2-gallon
2
containers
gallon
or something.
container. Thank you. That project. That's how that project's being done. We got a grant from Tree Vitalize, as well as from
Green Regions.
Green Regions, thank you, George, to do that project. And they are, that was actually in the works, believe it or not, before this committee formed, and had already been agreed that's where they were going. So, but that's what's happening with that.
Okay. Is it a rain garden you're doing, or are they just,
The rain garden is coming in over here
okay,
at Township building. There's one here and there's one up on the hill.
Okay.
But over there, it's predominantly just plantings. They've been put into place. Hopefully if you know that area, it gets pretty wet. And so they've been picking species of trees and predominantly shrubs that are very, not only just water tolerant, but absorb a lot of that to help in that area.
mhm.
Is there any way to put like bald cypress or pond cypress in that area? They're really good at sucking up the water.
I can look at what they were scheduled to put in there, and I want to say bald cypress may have been one of the ones, but we can check that.
Okay.
And are they all being planted by volunteers, or they're gonna, who's installing it?
So it is predominantly volunteer. Chester Ridley Crum is assisting them with it. And I know Chester Ridley Crum is getting some volunteers as well with it.
We're trying to consider whether we're gonna buy more trees for your area, right?
Yeah, and I apologize that it kind of got us off track a little bit. I just thought some of the trees were coming out of George's area.
Okay,
And he just informed me they aren't, so.
I'm sorry, they are, or they are not?
They are not.
They are not.
So you're gonna still probably have 20 trees left in your area when you get done. So I say that because if we commit to buying trees come spring or later this fall, we want to make sure we get them in one of the two places, and that we're not, typically, and I could be wrong, I've been told the nursery's good for 1 or 2 years at the max.
Mhm.
Like that's not something, you don't want trees staying there longer than that.
Right.
You want to get them into the ground.
You have room for them?
So we would have room for more trees. I mean, if I were to get 10 more trees, I would have room for them. For one thing, I mean, Luke's going to take some of them. And that's going to reduce the number. I do have room in there for more. So it's one of those things, do we want to increase our stock? Is there a project, a planning project that you would think that we would want to do in November when they actually are delivered to us? Because we order now, but they wouldn't come until November. Or do we want to pass for a cycle, which is also fine?
Do we have any, I don't think we have any projects. In the newly formed board, I don't know if we're familiar with it, and does it make sense to buy them if we don't need them? And you would know better than I, if you think it makes sense.
You said we get this offer twice a year?
That is correct, yes.
So is it every 6 months or, when would be the next time that we would be offered this,
Sure. I believe they will send something out probably in February for April.
Okay.
So if we don't have any projects coming up, maybe we should wait for April.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Why
fine.
buy? We don't need them. Right?
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with passing. I actually initially was thinking about just passing this time, and then I thought, oh, wait a minute, that's not really my purview at this point.
Right.
It's to bring in front of you.
And that's the key. We didn't want to make a decision as staff that if you weighed in and said, well, we really think you need to get X because it's there. So here's what I would suggest then. One is it does change. The list is not always the same. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So as the list comes out, we'll make sure that you get it. One of the challenges we have is that usually it's a fairly short turnaround. I don't know when George got this exactly. I have to look back at the email, but usually it's less than, I think it's like a 30-day turnaround typically. So if it happens to come when you don't have a meeting, we probably should have done some homework ahead of time to be able to say, one is where do we think the next project is and know where we think we want to do plantings. And two, be kind of prepared of like what type of trees, if we happen to be in a position where we don't have a meeting coming up, that at least we are able to say the trees are this and these are the list of the priorities that you've given us, kind of based off of the tree list that they had from this go round. We would be able to do a similar kind of thing, and that's what I would look for. And we don't need to do that tonight. It may be something we add to the November meeting just as a discussion point. But I just want us to make sure that when February comes, we're ready to roll when it's time.
Well, also you could, the 10 trees, you could just offer them to residents in the township if you wanted to get them, and just, if someone wanted to plant in the township in front of their front yard or something, that's doing the same thing as making a big project.
Yeah, sure.
You could, I mean, you could still get them, and then they're having that thing up in St. Albans Circle. You could have it where either have a raffle that they put money into it to get a tree or whatever. Yeah, I don't know, just something that I could just throwing that out there, you know? And then that way people will be planting them in their yard, then you're getting them, just not certain projects in the township, in the parks and stuff, you're getting that on people's lawns, actually.
Sure.
You know, you could do that, still get the trees. I mean, if you said they're $50 a piece and you said they're substantial, it would be worth it to do it, to get residents to plant them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But that's, I don't know if the supervisors have to approve that or not, because it's,
Good idea.
we don't have money in our thing to do it. So,
Yeah.
I can't say personally, but if the supervisors say, yeah, that'd be a great thing to do, just put it out there, it kind of promotes the Shade Tree Commission, what we're trying to do to the township.
Right.
Not a bad call. I like it.
Yeah.
So, and I would say this then, if there's a thought that something like that would be wise, then should we get some trees and just figure that in November they'll be coming in? And then if we don't have something together that we could distribute them or find a way to do that, we put them in the nursery. And if not, we try to have a resident piece.
Yeah, because I'm sure people would take them to plant, there's plenty of people who would take them to put in their yards.
But we already have a bunch of trees in inventory too, right? So
We
don't-
do. Yeah, we've probably got about 30 right now.
Is that,
Yeah, but I'm saying the ones, if they're in there and they've been in compost, the root structure on them is a lot
They
bigger than what
start,
someone wants
yeah,
to,
they push.
then the bare root ones coming in that can go right in someone's yard. They're a lot different.
Oh,
You know.
that's a good point.
So-
Yeah,
so-
that's a good
they'll be
point.
better, more likely to live.
Yeah, well, more likely, if they're just coming from the Horticultural Society and they don't have that big root structure, like if, I'm sure when he pulls them out, it looks like strings coming out. I've done it before. I do it at my house and
Yeah.
bank stuff in, and it happens all the time. I mean, you got the root balls 3 times what it should be, but you don't want to chop those roots off, so you kind of just bundle them
You
up.
work
and
with
take
it.
you. You work with it, you know?
And we have been very fortunate in very successful transplanting from the tree nursery to the ground.
Okay.
It's been,
Yeah.
you know, it's gone very well. Not 100%, but I'm saying, you know, we've done very well with them surviving, moving from there into a permanent home.
Maybe we should get a couple.
Yeah, do we want to, we need a list, right? You're going to get a list. We don't know what that list is yet, what they're going to offer us.
The list is
Right there.
up here.
You just have to get up and walk
Yeah.
over to it.
Can you go ahead and blow that up and we'll just take it up? There you go.
I
Blow it
can't
up
see
one more
that
time.
there.
Crab, mountain ash.
Even with my glasses on.
Yeah,
I can see it. One B. That's good, red maple.
That a little bit easier for people to
It
read.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
American Legion, yeah.
Definitely not mountain ash.
I know, really, we don't want that. We don't want any more ash trees, right?
Well, mountain ash isn't an ash.
Well, it's mountain ash.
It's not an ash.
It's not an ash.
It's not an ash.
I'm not super familiar with that one.
Well, what's the matter with mountain ash?
It's got fire blight.
Everything has fire blight.
Uh,
Hawthorns, we just approved hawthorns we planted on thing, and they get rust,
That's 'cause
cedar
they're-
apple rust, they
Yeah,
get,
no,
they- yeah, I mean.
I don't
Okay,
weed
we could even take one of the ones that's in it.
Buckeye is nice.
2 gallons.
That's what
If it doesn't rain,
Just
just
a show.
Just to show.
Yeah, I mean, honey locusts, I like them. American lindens are good.
Yellowwood's good.
Sugar maples, they're good. I'm
American linden looks good.
good for grabbing more if we want them. Right?
If you want to
Yeah,
tell me
I
some to write down, I will.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a tree that's gonna get large to let the
Right.
people plant, you know, not just like a dogwood or something. I would say like a substantial shade tree, like a
Do we-
maple.
do we-
There's a
oak.
roper macrocarpa hybrid. That's pretty cool.
Which one?
There's a
Carol
Crocus
planted
roper
her house.
macrocarpa, Heritage is it's an oak hybrid.
Oh,
That's pretty cool. That, the swamp white is wonderful. Hackberries are wonderful, good trees. They get lumpy leaves, but
It's like we're buying trees. Do we want to, you want to table
Swamp
this
white
and
oak is nice.
talk about it? Or you
So if you
vote?
want to, here's what I'm working a side deal with George on the side here. The
Are you
township-
texting?
the township has the table at the farmer's market tomorrow. We will come up with some signage between now and that time. I'm looking at Steve, he's going to help us do that. So we're going to come up with some
Good
signage.
news, Steve.
We're going to, we're going to get one of the trees that's in a bucket right now and one of the, what do you call it? Bucket?
5 gallon.
Yeah.
5 gallon, whatever container. We'll take it over and just kind of see what we get. As we get interest, we'll let people do that. And then, we'll say, if you're interested, if you'll sign up here, most of the cost would be to you would be the $55. If the township chooses to do something different, we'll let them know. But that way we can do that. We'll put it on the agenda for Monday night, let the board make a call on it. But we can put it out that at least that, if they had to buy the tree, it would be $55. Is that right, George?
Well, if they bought the tree outside of this, it would be
Yeah,
over
no,
100 probably, but
yeah, but what I'm saying is we could do that. We can sell it back to them for the 55.
yeah, I think we can.
So that's what we would do. And
Oh, that
if
sounds
if
great.
you're okay with that, we'll just say this is something that Shade Tree Commission was interested in, trying to encourage people to put trees in
Yeah.
the front yards and do that, if that makes sense.
so
So
do
do
we
you have a
pick like what?
suggestion?
Just like 10 trees, just make it an easy number like that? Just-
If we get 10 people that do it, I would say we'll do up to 10. How's that? And then
Okay.
Yeah.
we'll go from there.
It's a good idea.
It will help us start moving towards our goal of planting 1,000 trees in the next 2 years.
All
Or
right.
Well, then there you
5
go.
years, I'm sorry, I said 2, but feels like 2.
Yeah. All right, well, there you go. All right, so shall we, we're going to vote? Motion?
Hold on, let's see.
Oh, hang on, Carol's right.
Good handwriting.
Pretty nice. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay, what do we do? Do we have to do a motion on this?
Yep.
And then-
Yep.
Motion? All in favor?
We
I,
got to do the motion first. before we
Oh.
do
Oh, I
that.
do the motion? Okay. So I motion,
You're motioning?
I'm
Okay.
motioning it.
Tom is motioning. Carol is second.
Anybody?
There's our.
Aye.
Aye, there you go. All right, so motion granted. Motion granted.
Would you like to, would you like to direct me as to what trees to get, or do you want me to just favor the larger?
Carol, I'm gonna defer to you on that.
I would say favor the Lord.
I like the large.
Yeah, that, I think, you know, favoring, we're sort of favoring some of the larger trees.
Right.
Is there any of the larger trees that you would not want?
Sugar maples aren't really happy around here at the moment. Global warming, they like to be in a cooler location.
I would say no to the catalpa.
Catalpa can be messy. It's got big leaves and
Yeah.
stuff, especially for somebody's front yard.
I'm gonna pick the ones we like.
Yeah, the cherry's got those, the black fruit, and that stains your walkway, and if you park under it, messes up your car.
The
Well, let's stick
hybrid's
with the-
probably good.
Elm hybrid, yeah. Honey locust. Although they get webworm.
Swamp white oak is nice.
Yeah, go with the Quercus bicolor and the Quercus robur macrocarpa heritage.
Yeah, both of those would be good.
How about yellowwood? Fragrant.
Yeah, yellowwood is nice too.
Cladrastus kentuckia, yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
What was the last one?
Up in the white section, the 1, 2, 3, like fourth one down, Cladrastus, the yellowwood, sorry.
Gotcha.
Common name.
And American linden is nice too. teal.
They are. They're soft wood
nice-
though.
What?
They're soft wood. Soft wood trees.
You want me to try to get 2 of each?
Sure,
That's
Yeah, they
5
grow-
then?
The lindens grow fast, so they.
they do.
Yeah.
They do.
So what
Everything
we're
in
gonna do is
Japanese
we're gonna
name.
put those out tomorrow as choices. And, you know, we'll let people sign up and we'll go from there. Okay?
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
All right.
Thanks,
And,
George.
and both the elms, right? Did we say both the elms? Almost, New
Okay.
Harmony and Triumph, either
Okay.
one or both.
Okay?
Consider it done.
Sure, try.
All
All
right,
right.
all right. So motion granted.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it.
Now that we did that.
So are we gonna,
Elms,
Two
yellowwood.
oaks.
Now he wants
Two of
to
each,
go
right?
to 9.7 or the
So
ordinance.
2 oaks, there's
Two
two
elms.
different elms, there's 2 different oaks. There's a yellowwood
Oh, linden.
and a linden.
That's 8, right? What else?
2, 4, 6, 8.
I think George wrote them down.
well, that's 8
Look,
so
somebody
far.
wrote it down.
He was circling and he left. So
Where's
he-
George?
Right.
Oh,
He
he left.
he
He's outta
had,
here.
he had choices that we could get to 10.
Well,
The
yeah,
yellowwood.
we'll let him pick 2 of his own.
that-
We've got 8 so far.
Yeah, well, maybe we get 2 of
Honey,
them,
no, he didn't say honey though.
a
No.
couple extra elms.
I think
I
we
like
only-
honey locusts, but they get webworm.
I think we only did 8.
I think we only did 8. Put the Celtis in there. I like the hackberry.
Hackberry,
Hackberry.
put it in there.
You like the bees that lay their eggs and bump the leaves, right?
Yeah. Well, that's okay. The linden, the bees go after the flowers and then,
Well, and he may have written down like 2 of each and that, so that.
but that,
made it-
we need 5 trees in order to have 2 of each to
Oh,
have 10,
okay.
is what we're saying.
Yeah.
How about the oak hybrid?
We already
We
picked
already said
that. We already picked both of
Oh,
those.
maybe that it, wait, that's 4.
There's bicolor.
That's 4. The 2 oaks.
Yeah,
It's
There's
4
there's
oaks.
2 different elms.
It's 4 oaks. 2 of each type.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I'm sure he can come
There
up
we
with
go.
10
That's where I
trees
know.
out of what we
That's what it
recommended.
is.
Right?
My math is off. There's 2 different elms, so that makes a total of 4. There's 2 different oaks. That makes a total of 4. And then there's a yellowwood and linden. which if we get 2 and 2, that's 6, that's 12.
I think we're good.
All right.
Whatever.
I know what we're doing.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
If there's anything left over, we'll plant it
so
over there.
that's motion's granted, we're moving
Carol just
on.
wants
Are we
to
going to go
wait 50 hours
to
for the
9.5?
No, let's go ahead if we can to 10.1. I don't want to keep
10.1.
Rich any longer than I have to.
Sure, let's go to 10.1.
If we don't get to it, to the other, we can handle that at a different time.
So we'll move to item 10.1, following the list of all ordinance changes to be reviewed by the township solicitor, then recommended by the Board of Supervisors.
So what Chris sent a copy of what you guys had done, and I think she sent and copied everybody. It's what's attached to your agenda. And so Rich went through and kind of reviewed it, made some comments. And so what I thought we would do is we would let Rich just walk through his comments with us real quickly. And we can make a decision of, whether or not we're ready to make a recommendation based off of his comments, or if there's some change that we need to make. And so I'm actually going to, Rich, if I can, turn it over to you.
Sure.
And let you just kind of work down your comment list, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
In case anybody doesn't know, this is Rich Sikora. He is the township special counsel. And he's really great at ordinances. So
We've never-
walk us
we've
through this
never-
To the
process.
extent anybody can be. Ordinances are very unique practice. And so I don't claim to be a specialist in them, but we spend a lot of time working with them and drafting them and changing them. So, I have some familiarity with the process, and it's always difficult because you have the state law that is what gives you the ability to create an ordinance. You have to stay within the confines of that and what the courts say is legal. And then you create the ordinance based off that state law. And then that ordinance may create a commission, and that commission itself then can create regulations or rules or policies on how it conducts business. And so Stephen had sent to me this ordinance and said, look, the commission has been chewing on this, and they had a number of comments and questions and suggestions. Can you take a look? So I said, sure. So I kind of noticed that there was like 47 comments / questions down the side. And I thought, I thought the easiest thing to do was just do a little comment after each one.
Okay.
So I don't want to have to go through every single one, but I can. It might just be easier. But what I noticed is that a lot of the questions all revolved around the same issues. So some fundamental type issues. And so it might just be easier to talk in terms of just those generalities first, and then we can get to the specifics. So first of all, we have already, right, chapter 104, which is our natural landscape features chapter in the code that talks about trees and the things that all land development ordinances, land development plans have to achieve. And it's not just specific to land developments, but land development stuff is incorporated into that. Then you have the land development requirements for trees in the land development ordinance itself that references chapter 104. And now we have this ordinance, which is specific to creating a shade tree commission and outlining what it's supposed to do. And so I think a lot of the confusion, or at least what I perceive as being confusion, is well, what are we specifically, what are the specific standards for specific things? And, I see questions like, should we be specific here? Should we be more specific here? Are we being specific enough? And I think a lot of times it is specific enough if you go back to the other chapter. And so the way this was kind of set up, I mean, there's a million ways to set this up, and until you actually dive into working through an ordinance, I'm not criticizing anybody who already wrote this up. I'm just saying until you start trying to enforce an ordinance or act under an ordinance, you start realizing, hey, maybe this could be clearer, or maybe this is conflicting with something else. So as we've gone through this and as you've seen all these questions, I just think sometimes it may be better to refer over to chapter 104, which sets forth very specific tree replacement formulas with types of trees. And so there's a tree replacement formula in this ordinance. And there's a tree replacement formula in chapter 104. To the extent that, I don't know, have you all reviewed and worked with chapter 104?
No,
We've never seen it.
Okay,
Their focus has been really on this.
on this, okay, so, well, there you
but
go.
it's
So
on the township website. We could.
it
access
is,
it.
it is, and so what a shade tree commission does in most townships, I'm not saying every township. My firm represents a lot of townships.
Mhm.
And the way primarily it comes up is two ways. One are shade trees, and usually that involves trees along streets, like street trees, trees on public lands, and trees associated with land development. Okay, that's usually what shade tree commission. I don't think that's exclusive, and I think what this ordinance does is goes beyond that. I don't think there's a prohibition of going beyond that, but usually usually the shade tree commission is regulating trees that are in our rights of way and on our public lands. So parklands, you talked about the paper mill house, the nature preserve, and those are important things that you guys can dive down deep in the details and make recommendations on removal, replacement, planning, stuff like that. Then there's the shade trees along the streets and the rights of way, and are they, what are the best trees so that they don't interfere with utilities, interfere with the ability of the public to get around, hazards to the public, permits to remove or replace those trees, and dealing with those types of things. And then there's land development, which is a separate animal, which is, I'm a developer, I want to come in, I want to build houses on this area that's forested right now. And then there's subdivision and land development ordinances that control how that works. And one of the elements in the subdivision and land development ordinances is required trees along streets, along driveways, along sidewalks or different places, and tree replacement. I want to cut down 100 trees. Well, what do I got to replace that with? And so it seemed to me, and it sounds like I was right, that perhaps we hadn't really read the other two big chapters that you guys are impacting on, which is our subdivision and land development chapter. Not the whole thing. I mean, if it's not related to trees, but you can actually go on the website and actually just pull up our subdivision and land development ordinance, and then type in the word trees, and it'll actually just show you everywhere where trees are mentioned. But even for the most part, our subdivision and land development ordinance, we call that the saldo. So I'll just call it the saldo from now on. Saldo refers to chapter 104, which is our natural features and landscaping chapter, which is very specific on types of trees, and spacing of trees, and tree replacement categories. And so when a land development application comes into the township, it's distributed amongst various folks. We never used to have a shade tree commission, but the various folks that these applications, and when I say applications, it's a piece of paper that says, hey, I want to develop this land. And attached to that is a series of plans that when you first look at them, they look like Greek, but you'll get used to seeing them. And there's landscaping plans and there's tree plans. And you look at these, each person who was at the township is assigned a different responsibility, looks at these plans. I look at it when the engineer has legal questions. Hey, what about this? What about this? Let's look at this. And I answer legal questions about it. When there's the township engineer goes through and make sure, hey, do you need zoning relief? The zoning officer goes through the same thing. Do you need zoning relief for this? You're building a restaurant with so many thousand square feet of space. Our zoning code says you're supposed to have X amount of parking spots because there's formula for that, you have to go to our zoning board. Right? And so everybody gets a little piece. We have a fire marshal looks to make sure that our fire engines can get around and it's, there's adequate separations. And one of the things our engineer used to look at is the tree replacement formulas and the tree replacement types of trees being proposed and how they're going to be planted, number one. And then number two, the actual observation of what's happening. Okay. Now we have an arborist and we have a shade tree commission. That ordinance that you've been looking at created you guys. And so now those land development plans will be forwarded to you and or your designee, the arborist, who then looks at those plans and says, hey, does this meet our requirements under chapter 104? And any additional requirements under, what's this, chapter 158, I think, the shade tree ordinance. But it can get confusing when an ordinance is written that has its own requirements and then refers to another chapter that has its own requirements that is also referenced by another chapter that it has its own requirements. And then it says, well, but if there's a conflict, follow this chapter. So now your arborist or your engineer or your commission has to look at one, then look at the other, then look at the other, and then determine which applies. So I think you may be able to streamline a little bit of that process in here without substantially changing what it is that you do and what your goals are. But I think it answers some of your questions about specificity, like tree replacement. Like I just saw questions in here about should we be specifying certain things, distances or numbers, and that's, I think those answers are already in that. I also noticed just generally that this ordinance, and this isn't something I think you were per se looking at, but I just think it's helpful if we're going to look at this, let's just look at it holistically. I think there's a couple permits that are referenced in here that are separate and apart from our normal permitting process. And it's not clear to me that those permits actually exist. I think we have to make those permits. And those permits seem to be maybe perhaps duplicative of permits that we already have to file. Meaning, if a person wants to come in and disturb over X amount of feet, they have to come in for a land disturbance permit, okay, or a grading permit. Well, in our tree ordinance, it says, well, if you're going to disturb more than X amount of feet, and it's going to include trees, you have to come in for a tree disturbance permit so that you can review the impact of that permit. Well, it seems to me that perhaps just one permit is required, our standard permit that we already have, and perhaps that permit just simply has to include any information about trees, and that will trigger our permit person to send it over to you. So it's not a separate application, and it's not necessarily a separate permit. It's just a qualification that you guys recommend or impose to be issued with the permit. And I don't think you have to look at that. I mean, I think that's something I can just look at, but my recommendation is, before we just go through the individual questions that you had, Stephen had said, hey, do we want to just make a recommendation to the board to go ahead and make some suggested changes? You could say yes, or you could say no, let's wait. What I'm suggesting is, I think if I sit down with the arborist and Andy Retchak, who handles that in processing of and review of the permits, he does that initial, hey, this is zoning, this is tree, this is, I think we might be able to streamline the process a little bit for the township and make it a little more effective and a little less confusing. So wasn't one of your questions. It's a suggestion by me. I don't think it would take a terribly long amount of time, but we want to make it work, and I think we want to make it work efficiently. Yeah, anybody have any questions on what we talked about so far?
No.
Okay.
We talked about this a few months ago. It puts it all in order.
I'm sorry?
It puts it all in order.
Yeah, I'm trying, yeah. It's like in the Army, right? We always start with the 30,000 square foot view, and then we work our way down to our individual sections. So that's the big overview. And then that's now, because you do have a a limited view of land development applications, but an important view of land development applications. So it's important to know where you fit in into that process. There's a planning commission, and there's that also reviews land development applications for compliance with our subdivision and land development ordinance. And then there's you guys that would look focus specifically. And again, you can designate that to your arborist and say, hey, we only want to have official consideration of when this happens. You know, we don't want every run of the mill application to be before us. We're going to designate you as our review person. Like just, you know, okay, yes, you're complying with this provision and he's a specialist in trees. You're not a specialist in trees per se, but you might want to say, hey, we want more involvement in this, a large, 50 lot development where we can kind of influence the way not only the trees specifically act according to our ordinance, but hey, maybe the developer can work with you and say we can make a particular look or blend it in with a particular area better, or hey, we notice, yes, you have the choice of these 10 trees, but you're, where you are, these trees might work better for our community as opposed to just for this lot. So
I'm going to interrupt you a second, just because you and I talked.
Yep.
And one of the things that you suggested, some of this, and I think this was one of those things, could actually be set by policy of this group. And it doesn't, we don't have to change the ordinance for that to happen. So
Right.
I want, as we go through, we're going to talk about a couple things that could be set by you by policy versus just by ordinance. And that way we'll put it down in writing so we know how you're operating, and so that, we as staff and the arborists know what actions to take on your behalf.
Yep.
But we don't have to change everything. And if you decide to change your policy, because we act outside of what you want to, you just change your policy. And it doesn't have to necessarily go all the way through the ordinance process again. And so it makes it easier.
So for instance, the ordinance says that you have the authority to review land development applications or your designee. Well, then, and it also, the ordinance says that you can create your own regulations. So for the conduct of your own affairs. So you can have a set process that, hey, when this comes in, this is how we want this to be handled until such time it meets these particular triggers. And then we want it handled this way. And what Stephen's talking about is that's an internal process that you guys vote on. You want to, you create this in a like a best practices kind of, or a flow chart, or however it is you want to organize how you conduct things between you and your person. But you don't want to have to go back to the board every time you want to change in the way you handle things internally and have an ordinance change, because they've kind of said, go handle this. They said, go handle this and create any rules and regulations that you need to make it work. So we're only looking at ordinance type things right now, not internal operating things. And let's see, so I just kind of went through and I saw some comments. Are there requirements or checks and balances to ensure the purpose of the goals are being achieved? That's one of those things I was talking about. You guys set your own goals. You have a purpose that you're designed to operate under. Well, what is it that I think what you do is you can just continually reevaluate yourselves, whenever you want, informally or formally, or just, personally say, hey, I don't think we're achieving the purpose of this. Maybe this is something that we can do a little differently to make that work. So I don't think there's anything ordinance change wise that you need to do to further flush out the purpose. This is what the purpose is, and then you guys do, create your goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think the more we are exposed to this, the more we'll catch on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, and Stephen will tell you, I mean, if you have a question, you can always just, reach out and we can just answer a question. You know what I mean? It's not like, And I don't always know the answer to everything. I mean, I'm not a tree ordinance specialist, right? I mean, it's like, I do a lot of municipal ordinances and a lot of municipal law. This is more expansive than anything that I've ever worked with, because this regulates a little bit more along the lines of how people treat trees on their property, even if it's not related to street tree, township tree, or
Right.
land development.
But that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's almost personal
Yeah.
property and heritage trees, and it was, that's where we kind of picked the
Yeah.
ball up and.
Yeah, and that's one of the ones yeah, and so, I do believe that you do have the authority to go beyond just the street tree. That when you read the second-class township code, it talks about the creation of a tree commission. It says, what up? Powers vested. General powers of the commission. The Shade Tree Commission has exclusive control of the shade trees in the township and is authorized to plant, remove, maintain, and protect shade trees on the public streets and highways in the township, excluding state highways. So, when I read that, it's more geared towards street trees. I'm not saying that is the limit,
Mhm.
but when we go beyond that limit, we should be careful. And so land development being a separate section, like the land development, there's a whole separate statute of the municipality's planning code that authorizes the regulation of development, and it can include trees, and you can review that, but you're not necessarily controlling that process. You're doing a separate ordinance. So when we're talking about heritage trees, for instance, okay, well, now we're saying, okay, we're going to regulate heritage trees beyond township property, beyond township right-of-ways, and on private property. And I think you can do that. But how intrusive are you recommending our board to be about heritage trees? Because the way it's written, those heritage trees, you're saying, okay, well, it's easily defined when you say a heritage tree is any tree that has a trunk larger than 30 inches or 36 inches, and you pick it. That's easy, right? It's an objective criteria, and it must be old because trees don't get that big until they get old. But then there's a separate definition in here, or a separate part of the definition that says, or trees that have cultural significance or historical, or it's a much more nebulous criteria. And you guys picked right up on that and said, well, what's the criteria? I don't know. That's something that that's pretty tough. It's probably easier. And I'm not just saying always take the easiest way, but it's cleaner. Easier meaning everybody knows their rights in this town. Everybody knows there's roles in this town. If we want to regulate heritage trees, if you just kind of limit it to a particular caliber, and say that's what we mean by heritage tree. Otherwise, you have to have a hearing to determine if it's a tree or not. And then after that hearing, it's going to be appealable to somebody, because once you have to apply a standard that's not just self-explanatory, objective criteria set forth, well, that means you're applying your discretion, and your discretion is always challengeable by someone else. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, do we want to go there now, or do we want to kind of wait and just say heritage trees are, a certain caliber and look at it that way?
I thought the homeowner had to agree to
Have
a
the
tree being
designated.
designated as a heritage tree. I mean, we would point out to him that we would
Yeah.
like it to be a heritage tree because it's a big old tree, but that he has the right to say, I'm not interested.
Well, meaning I believe you're correct when you say that that heritage tree, I mean, listen, you can recommend to somebody or you can regulate whether it can come down or not. And I don't believe,
I thought, well,
and I think there was a replacement. Let's see here. Go to the heritage.
If we look on, I'm trying to figure out what page number it is and I'm missing. Oh, here we go, page 14.
I got 5.
Want to go to page 14?
Well, 4 and 1 and 5.
Yeah, down at the bottom, it calls removal disturbance. And
And there's a whole process here to have it determined if it's a heritage tree. And it says it's strongly discouraged, a person shall not undertake any of the following activities without first applying for and obtaining a heritage tree removal permit. So you have to get a permit to remove it.
earning more than 20%.
The commission shall approve or disapprove each heritage tree removal permit and provide a written basis for its findings. Commission shall have the authority to require that a heritage tree be replaced in compliance. I mean, the ordinance says you have the authority to deny the removal of a heritage tree, what I'm looking at.
yeah, you're right.
Um,
I thought it had to,
Well, and
The owner of
in
the tree
another
had to
piece here,
approve.
and I'm with you, because in another place it says removal is discouraged. So there's one, there's one thing which is a cooling off period, which is what I think you might be more interested in, which is, hey, look, this is a tree on your property and you're going to be able to take it down. But before you do, you got to come to the Shade Tree Commission. And you got to, because it's bigger than a certain caliber. And that's automatically defined because I'm coming in for a swimming pool. I got to disturb earth. There's going to be a plan that's going to be required that says it's 30 inches or bigger, whatever our caliper is. It's got to come to you. And then you guys can say, hey, you have to come before us, or at least have a cooling off period where even if they don't want to come in and talk to you, they at least have to listen to you. You can send them information and say, it took 300 years for that tree to grow. If you move your pool 10 feet and it doesn't impact any other zoning ordinance, you could save this tree. And are you sure you want to do this? And this is the importance of a tree. So it's a cooling off period that allows you to educate them. But then they still are able to do it if they want, right? That's what I think when you say it's up to them, which I like. And I think we can simplify this whole thing then, because then we don't need this whole hearing to determine if it's a heritage tree or not, because you're saying it's just a certain caliber or a specific species. If it's, if there's a specific species that doesn't grow around here anymore, so we know by designation. But I can't think of any other instance where we think a tree is.
I think the reason why it was originally written this way and was as broad as it was like there was a tree that was planted in memory of Clinton Cunningham on township property.
Right.
And so they wanted to include that as a heritage tree. But I think we could call it a commemorative tree.
Yes.
And solve the same problem and eliminate.
And it's on township property, so it has nothing to do with
Right.
the homeowner's right.
Mhm.
And so if that's what your goal is, and I'm not telling you what your goal is, I'm just trying to read what your comment just there and some questions that I saw in here. I think we can simplify that. And if we're going to change the ordinance to answer a couple of your questions and answer a couple of your concerns, maybe we can address more than that and just kind of get it all done so that it's where you like it and what you want to be.
I think in section D under 1 and which is also at the bottom of page 14, it talks about no trees on public property, private property, blah, blah, blah. if the tree proposed to be designated a heritage tree on private property, the commission must give the property owner, and I think that's what you were talking about, John, is that area. And I think if we change the definition of the of the heritage tree to be just the 30 inches DBH, I think we eliminate, it automatically makes it a heritage tree. And, you know, I'm not sure then you have to go through all of that. And
There's no hearing required. It's, you know, it's automatically going to get forwarded to you. It's any permit that has a tree coming down over that caliper. It's a heritage tree.
I thought that's what we had written.
But I think the ordinance is, I think that we had gone back and forth, and I think the ordinance itself, there's a lot of questions that Trish left in here as these are questions. And I think we're saying potentially you could take that out, define the heritage tree
It's
as
just 30 inches.
just 30
Well, that's what I
inches.
thought it was. I thought that's what John said last month in that meeting, that special meeting we had. I thought that's what we designated, a 30-inch tree was.
We
a
did
heritage tree.
designate it, but we still had some of this other language that was not taken out. And
Oh,
that's
I
why
didn't-
we're
I
saying
don't know what language.
maybe
I
the
didn't-
recommendation
Well,
is.
yeah, just for instance, if you go to the definition of heritage tree, a tree having, and then what your debate before was, is it a 36 or 30 inch DBH?
Well,
right?
John said 30-inch because he said
Yeah.
36-inch tree. Well,
It's-
obviously.
it's near the end of its life,
It's
yeah.
gonna have, it's going towards the end of its life, so if a builder comes in,
Right.
he can say, well, it has this defect in the bottom of this, so he can get away over that. So if you make it 30,
You can
and it's
protect
not
more.
written as 30, that's not considered a heritage tree at this point in time. So he can remove that without the designation of, it's easier to get rid of than saving it. So if you lower it to 30, it's harder to get rid of those mature trees.
Right, well, right. I mean, if it's a 36-inch tree, it's going to be more like my 52-year-old knees than
Right.
a 30-inch tree. It's going to be like my 30-year-old knees, right?
Right.
So, but if you read your definition, just beyond just the caliber, right? A tree having 30 inches or greater DBH. It also says a tree subject to 158-10-D1 of exceptional age or rare species or associated with a notable historic event, person, structure, or landscape. So now, you know, essentially what we're saying is, yeah, well, it's any tree of a certain size, or if we really like that tree. And now, so now it's vague, right? So
Right.
now how do you apply that? And somebody asked a question about that. And it's tough to apply. So now you need standards to say, okay, well, what are the standards to measure this by? And then you have to have a hearing. And somebody can challenge your determination. If the ordinance just says 30 inches or bigger, it's 30 inches or bigger. That's my point.
I think it's more to get like a replacement for the heritage tree than it is. You
That's
can't
what-
really stop a person from taking it down. It's just replacing.
That's,
Get-
and that's, so it's based on
You know,
caliber.
you can't stop someone taking it down at their
Right.
property. You know you can't. I've seen it down in Springfield where I do work, where the people, they denied it. They cut it down anyway. They paid the $600 fine. Then what are you gonna do? You know, that's what they did.
I mean, you know, you can make them put it back.
Yeah, right. Would you for the time?
You know, I mean, really, but yes, that's my point. So it sounds like everybody's kind of nodding, like pretty much in agreement that we want to go in that direction of simplifying it.
Flag.
Yeah, okay.
I'm all for it.
So and again, so this isn't, so I'm not saying make any final decision here. What I'm kind of saying is if you let me go through this and just do what I think. So I'll show you what I'm doing, but A, simplify it so there's just more some objective standards. B, just refer to chapter 104 and the saldo when we can, and say that's the, you know, that's the way, and simplify that permitting process. So we don't have a tree / grading / there's like 3 or 4 different permits listed that were kind of like /// kind of became confusing. We just don't have that. I can do what it is that this wants to do,
Okay.
and that I think that you would.
The tree replacement formula that we came up with,
Yep.
that still works with chapter 104?
Well, you know,
Because that's kind of the guts of what we worked on.
well, I think as long, it does, as long as you, because your tree replacement for you is based on a caliber, right? I mean,
Right.
it's just, hey,
3
this
to
is what,
6
this
inches.
is what you had, and this is what you're replacing it with. Chapter 104 is a little more specific on, types of trees and things like that. The only one that I was a little confused on, and just the way I read it, is just the heritage tree. It looked like you had to replace it with at least a caliber of 30% of the heritage tree. And I think that means not one single tree of 30% of the caliper, right? But of just replacement trees.
Right. We're talking about a 2.5 inch to 3 inch caliper tree. So 30% of 30 is 9 inches. So you
Yeah.
need 3 trees.
3 trees, okay. And I thought that was the case. It wasn't in the particular location where that was referenced. It wasn't clear that that's exactly what you're saying versus just
Okay.
30% caliper has to replace. So if it's a 36-inch tree, you got to replace it with a 15-inch or tree. That's a big tree. So I'll fix that. Yeah,
I would just bring to your attention, since you just brought that up and we did the math, you did the math there. You're actually saying that a heritage tree of 30 inches or greater requires less of a replacement than a 20 to a 30 inch, which will require 4 replacement trees. So you may want to just revisit that enough to say, it seems like you're being punitive to the 20 to 30, in that process. And maybe that's the intent, but I just would say, based on the number that you just did,
well, what we could just do, what we could say is no less than, right? So it
Yeah.
shall be this.
Well, we
but in
could
any
make it
event, no less than that.
50%. What do you guys?
Yeah.
So then that'd be 5 or more trees.
I think what you could do. I mean,
Versus 4.
If you like that number, what you could just simplify, without just increasing that number, I think what you could say is it'll be 30%, but in any event, no less than
5.
no less than that next smaller tree. So it'll never be smaller, right? It'll always have to be that 30%, but it could always be bigger.
Well, let's make it 50%, because then we're up to 5 trees or more versus a minimum of 4 trees for the 29 inch. Does that make sense?
I'm not doing anything till I read chapter 104. Answer me one thing. So where is this chapter 104 come from? Is this state? I
No,
mean, where did,
yeah, no, this is a township ordinance that I believe springs largely from, let's just pull it up real quick. I believe it springs largely from the SALDO, the subdivision and land development ordinance, or the MPC, and street trees. The ability to regulate street trees.
Now we can, when they come in for land development, can we have different rules for like a private homeowner than when they come in for land development? Or like a building, like if they're, say just a homeowner's taking down a building and they build on the building plan, they have to take down trees. Now, does that fall under like land development? Can we do it different? Like amount of trees that have to be replaced?
Yeah.
Can we
because-
separate the two, or
Yeah.
is there like, you have to do it as a blanket thing because you can't, like?
Well, you could separate the two as long as there's a rational basis for doing it, such as, buffering and buffering is a big one, right? Like just, a business has, my house is naturally going to have trees because I'm going to self-buffer myself against my neighbors, right? But a business, they're not buffering anything because they're the opposite. A business wants to be out into the world, so you can require certain buffering requirements. But if we look at chapter 104, So, but a lot of those standards already exist in the land development world. So you don't have to do anything. Now,
Right, for land
Yeah.
development, we
Yeah.
really don't have to do anything.
Right.
They're all set. We're just
Right.
talking homeowners. Can we do different, like, say they're taking a couple trees down without like a land development plan, they're taking them down, they're along the street, we require a permit.
Yeah.
Can we do different replacement values than what we do for a,
I'm going to be honest. I don't know the answer to your question off the top of my head. I'd be nervous about it. Because what's the basis of doing that, right?
Can you, let me, maybe to ask the question this way, what if you make your decision, land development is this formula, but a non-land development is this formula, and that's the difference. You know, land development has a higher formula or
Mhm.
what, because we want to make sure that you don't just go in and clear cut a lot
Right.
and do
And not
that.
replace anything.
And you don't replace anything. However, if it's a homeowner who's doing this, you know, the focus has always been, or at least with this group has been, we're not determining what's in the backyard. We're focused on what's on the front.
Mhm.
And I know we have to talk about the 50-foot issue,
Yeah.
but you know, if we're focused on that, that's the formula based on the front yard.
Mhm.
It doesn't, I mean, could you do that? I think that's what you're asking.
yeah, I mean, like
Yeah.
down in Springfield, if you cut down a tree, if I go down to Springfield, cut down a tree in the front yard setback of the house, they want a 1-for-1 replacement.
Mhm.
They want at least one shade tree in the front of that yard. Because like down along Rolling Road and all that, so many of the big oak trees died and no one replaced them. So now it looks totally different. You know, now they're starting to make them like, get your permit,
Yeah.
you take down the tree, and then they want to follow up to make sure, then they have another permit, a tree planting permit. They just want their $25 each time, but, you know, but I'm saying is, you know, they're pretty lenient what they let you plant back. You
Right.
know, but, you know, they have their little,
Yeah. I thought your question was, can you make a commercial business do something different than the private business?
no, I'm saying like land development's land development. Can
Yeah.
you let like the homeowners and like, say a business takes down a tree in front of their house or
Yeah.
something in front of their business, and then the person takes down in front of their house, can you make that a separate
Yes.
set?
And that's what I'm suggesting here.
Just
is it's-
blanket, make it
it's-
easier,
it's-
because we shouldn't get into land development. That's all set up. That should have nothing to do with us. That should all be. set
That's
up.
kind of what I'm saying here
Yeah.
is when we get to the land development, I do think there's a value with the tree the organization that specializes in trees to look at land development plans and have input. But you're right, it is all set. And so I don't think your ordinance that's specific to you should do anything with respect to setting standards, is what I'm saying. I think it should just refer
I
over
agree,
to what
yeah.
already exists and just say, any plan that comes in is going to come to you. And then,
Yeah, review
And
them,
then-
John,
yeah.
review them and say, yeah, he has enough trees or whatever types in this. That's fine. And we go, okay, that's fine.
exactly, you
Yeah.
guys might look and say, yeah, but we think it should focus on this more because this neighborhood has beautiful this. and that."
Yeah.
But yes, that's exactly what I was saying earlier.
Okay, yeah.
You picked up right up on it. And so if you go to that natural features and landscape and terminology, protection and conservation standards, regulated activities. There's a lot in here. Minimum planning requirements.
We were reinventing the wheel. We were reinventing the wheel.
We're doing land development.
Right, but
But everything that
I
we've been
think
doing,
we
basically.
should have started at this point. Or we should have
We
started
put the
at this
cart
point.
before the horse,
Right.
so we should have done chapter 104 before we even looked at T8.
So that's kind of what I'm suggesting.
I mean, that
Let's-
was my main question to begin with, when
Yeah.
we came in here, and they started talking about land development, I says, is there? I don't even know what you.
Yeah.
Are you like making one person do one thing and not making the other? And is the other person that does land development say, well, how come he can do this this homeowner could do this? Why don't I
I
have
know,
to follow those rules?
if
And
you
end up
guys-
in court that we made an ordinance that the homeowner could do this.
If you guys let me work with Andy Retchek and Stephen and the arborist, I forget his name. Mr.
John.
John
John.
Hosbach.
John Hosbach.
Hossbach. If you just let me,
Rockwell
if you let me just work with,
Rockwell.
without changing what you
Is that what it is,
do,
Rockwell?
without destroying your work that you've done. I know, I think I understand exactly what it is you want to see. And I think I can just, and then you can look at that. And then if there's tweaks that you want to do to something else, that's something that can be done separately. I think that leaves us with this, the big, most of all, there was like 47 bubble comments, and I answered 47 bubble comments. I just think I'm going to bore you to tears if I go through 47 bubble comments, because it all kind of goes around these same things that we're already discussing. They were all handled by these general thoughts, except for the big one, which is, you know, this how big of a swath. There's different regulations that you have in here. You have just, like I said, there's the land development, you have the general clear cutting and earth disturbance, and then you have the street trees. And going to what you were just talking about, those street trees, you know, in most townships, we're regulating if it's not land development and it's not on township land, we're regulating what's in the right of way.
Correct.
And it's hard to determine what the right of way is sometimes, but that's where we have that control all the time. And you can actually take action and yourself order the township, say, we want this tree taken down. We're you know, this is a determination we're making that, you know, you tell the homeowner to take down a tree because it's in the right of way and it's dangerous, blocking, and you make that determination that it has to come down, and they don't do it. There's consequences, right? It's or a tree that's overhanging the right of way, personally, you know, and is sick and diseased, pursuant to your arborist, and it's going to impede that right of way or be a hazard to the public. So it's all based on that right of way.
Now, did you see a problem with what we wrote in our thing about the right of way?
Well, that's what, yeah.
At the front yard of the house, or 50 or 40 feet, I forget.
Right. Well, what I'm going to have to look at, and I just don't know, okay, is when it's not land development, it's not right of way based, and it's not township based. I don't know what the extent of your authority is to regulate that front yard. Okay. And so I do know that you can't just go in and make somebody remove a tree on their property if it's not in the right of way and it's not immediately in danger of harming someone or obstructing traffic in the right of way. That's just, you just don't have the authority to tell somebody you got to take that tree down. Whether you can regulate their ability to take it down is it.
That's totally backwards. We don't tell people to take a tree down. If they come to us and say they want to take a tree down, we can tell them that we'd rather they
Well,
not.
no, John, is being the township arborist,
Yeah,
could be driving down the road and see this big dead oak tree overhanging
Right away.
I'm
Bishop
distinguishing.
Hollow
Yeah,
and 252, or
right,
Bishop Hollow and Westchester Pike,
right,
that it's totally dead and it's gonna fall,
right.
and you know.
So what I'm doing is
there-
I'm distinguishing between what you were talking about, which is regulating a private person's ability to remove trees. And what I'm distinguishing that between your ability to enforce the safety of the town because of street trees, okay? And so my primary experience has been in the other. It's all based on street or public trees, all right? I don't have personal experience working with townships regulating private, unless it's land development, regulating a private homeowner's property and saying, we're limiting your ability to remove trees in your front
Yeah,
yard.
like down in Springfield. there
Yeah,
were-
I
deal with them
understand.
a lot. It's
Yeah.
from the front of the house
I get you.
to the street
Oh,
is
yeah.
basically it. You know,
Yeah.
if you have a tree there.
Yeah.
That's what they want you to get a permit, you know,
Yeah.
pruning or removal. That's
And
what they
so,
want.
so
Because,
let me take a look at that, because
yeah,
so when we talk about defining a street tree, that has multiple implications, right?
Right.
Because there's that other part that I'm talking about. So it might just be, we're talking about other trees. I know what you want. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the ability to regulate the clear cutting of trees or the removal of trees in a front lawn with respect to the requirement to replace it with something. Right? That's a
Yeah,
separate
you just-
issue than other public right-of-way trees, and I know what you're talking about, and I'll look at that. Okay, I just don't know the answer. I've never, I've never dealt with that. That doesn't mean.
I mean, I've had to get a lot of permits.
Yeah.
Take, shade tree permits for townships.
Yeah,
taking down
no, I'm
stuff.
not saying you
And
can't, I'm
that's
just saying, I just
usually
don't,
I
I've
mean, that's
never,
usually the way they're written from what
yeah, yeah,
from what, just past experience.
Yeah.
That's what it is, that's what they want from you,
yeah, yeah, I got it.
So I have a question for you. We have the authority to tell anybody who's got a dead tree in their front yard that is overhanging the street, that has to come down.
Yes,
They're all over. There's dead ash trees all over the place.
yeah,
So,
that's why you need a tree commission to look at that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, no, frankly, you're supposed to have that ability. I don't know if this ordinance says, it,
right.
but the township has that authority, because they have to protect the right of way. And so what it's the best thing you can do, the easiest way to do it is to, have a commission that meets and says, okay, we're evaluating this on a regular
Yeah,
basis.
well, we wouldn't really go out and do that. I know like Springfield and other townships, they hire someone like John's company
Yes,
and they do a thing in a township, and
Yes.
they check all the streets and they make a determination what trees could come down. Then the township can act on that.
that's right.
Right.
And it's charged
We don't
to,
act on that because we don't have, I mean, yeah, I'm a certified arborist and all.
Yeah.
But I don't have the insurance first, for one thing, and telling someone has to.
No,
I mean,
it's
I'm
under the
not-
town, it's under the townships. You act
Yeah,
on the township is giving you the authority to act on certain things. And when you act on that authority, you're covered under the township. When you act outside of that, that's a different story. But as long as you act within what's given to you within the ordinance, and then you're acting in that, and we have insurance to cover you.
yeah,
in
I mean,
that.
obviously, a dead tree's a dead tree.
and
I
you're,
mean, I
and
can
you're
tell-
not,
I
and you,
mean,
yeah,
I-
and you as a certified arborist are not the one who has to go out and make that determination.
I mean, I
You're
was,
just-
yeah, I mean, I was in Saxter Avenue and Baltimore Pike. There was an oak tree. It had root rot, and I told the Shade Tree Commission, just going to a few of their meetings, probably for 2 years, that thing was gonna fall.
It's going to fall, got to remove
It
it.
fell.
Yeah.
I said, it's got root rot, it's gonna
Yeah.
fall. And thank God, when it went,
Yeah.
during a storm came in, it
Yeah.
went over. No one was at that traffic light when it went over, and it took out the light poles, everything.
And that's, and so when John goes out and he's looking at things.
Right.
He's looking for the township, but he's looking on your behalf.
Mhm.
So when he acts and he brings information back to you, he's kind of like your eyes and ears out in the community, just like when we use our engineer to go out and do something, and she comes back and gives a report to the board, it's kind of that kind of same thing. They're then taking action based off of that. You don't have to go out and make the
No, you
call
don't do,
yourself.
you don't. You don't take any action unless you're essentially sitting here. That's that you're protected. You have a bubble around you because you're
Mhm.
acting as a board, not as individuals out there. In fact, you don't want to do that. We've had situations in the past where folks were showing up at construction sites saying, stop this bulldozer. I'm on this committee. No, your job is to sit here and make decisions as a board, not to put on a badge and go enforce laws as, Wyatt Earp, as fun as that might be. And listen, I mean, it's, sometimes you see something that you know is wrong. I mean, it sounds fun, but you feel like, hey, I got to do something about this. You got to call him. That's the answer, or George, or somebody like that. But yeah, so I mean, there's cases like, just to give you how this comes up, there's like cases where the township is issuing a notice of violation to a woman because her sidewalk is uneven
Mhm.
because of tree roots. And she goes, this is the third time I've replaced my sidewalk. I just want to take this tree down. And she goes she applies to take the street tree down. And the tree commission says, no, you don't have to take those trees down. Those trees are healthy. She goes, but I'm getting notices of violation from the township. We're like, well, you're going to have to keep replacing your sidewalk. And, now you have a conflict, and then she has to appeal the tree commission's findings to the Court of Common Pleas, and ultimately went up to the Commonwealth Court. And I think they let her take it down. But, there's real impacts on the stuff that you have to consider. That's what you want to focus on. I don't think you want to, you know what you want to focus on. We just want to make sure that this is geared towards what you want to focus on. That's not a lot of work. It's just something that we gotta clean up for you. And so if you want me to do that and you want to take a look at chapter 104 and just look at the saldo, the subdivision and land development ordinance, I think it's chapter 148.
I think that's right.
You'll see it, subdivision and land development ordinance. There's a little bit about trees in there. And then it also refers to chapter 104, which has a lot more about trees. And we'll leave all of that, anything with respect to land development, we're not touching in this tree ordinance. We're just going to say, we're going to review plans for compliance with, or your designate for compliance with those chapters. So that shrinks that down.
But we don't need that whole section about land being disturbed and so forth, because that's covered under.
When it's in the
subdivisions.
context of land development, that's right. I think there is a provision in here. Is there a 5-year look back for subdivision and land development in this ordinance? That may be better just to make in the land development.
If it isn't, it's where it should be.
Yeah. All right, guys. I mean, I hope I didn't make it more confusing. My goal is to come in and try to help. And any questions, like I said, just route them for Stephen and I can.
So if you're comfortable and the board, if you want to, as a commission, give us direction just to go and work with Rich, and John and Andy and I will work with him and kind of try to simplify this, make it a little bit easier for you. And then we'll set it up so that it can work by policy, if that works. I think we have enough of what you'd like to see, and then we can make a determination if we can handle it by policy or if we can handle it, if we need to handle it by ordinance. And then we'll come back with a recommendation to you, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, our recommendation would be for you guys to look at 104.
Can you give us a link to 104?
If you go to our website
Yeah, it's on the website.
and you go to,
I'm
Steve,
a
would
tree
you go
person.
back to the
Okay,
process real quick
website
to
then.
show? And I will have Steve send you out a link. but
Yeah.
Just, if you just go under business and you go to the
building code.
and then you. Your chapter 3 here. 104 is right there. Okay.
Mhm.
So anything in the township, if you wanted to just go, if you go to this is actually. This is actually a third-party website that hosts our code.
Mhm.
And if you go in and type in that top area there, and let's say you just typed in trees, it would give you every place in there that has the word trees in it anywhere. You'd probably get tired of reading,
Mhm.
but that it's there.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll motion.
But it's the subdivision and land development ordinance and the landscape and natural features, so chapter 148 and chapter 104. That's
That's
the,
what we need to do.
that's what you'll
That's
find
where the
lightning.
focus is.
So we will motion that you guys will.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
motion.
fine. If you just give us direction, that way I can take action because there's gonna be a cost to the township. And
Yes.
I just need to know that I've got authority to do that.
Yes. We motion? Yep.
Yes.
Sure. All right. Motion granted.
It's very nice to meet everybody.
Thanks, Rich.
And I'm looking at our time, so I'm going to very quickly, if I can, just cover what I want to say about section 9.5,
Mhm.
and then I'll let you finish out your meeting. So what I'm going to do, the township has passed a resolution that it wants to participate in the PA sustainability communities, and it's a certification process. And in that, there are lots of different things. And I think there are 3 or 4 areas Steve sent out to, I forget how many for this one, maybe only been 2. Oh, okay, so Steve will send out the ones that pertain to you. I'll ask Steve to go through and do that and send that out to you. Which ones pertain to this committee. All I'm asking is for you to look at those for right now, get a feel of where we are today. Understanding that some of them, just the fact that you exist is one of the things that is required. So we're going to go through those, and we will look at trying to improve in that area. Thanks, Rich.
Hey, Rich.
We'll look at trying to improve in those areas of sustainability long-term. We can talk more about that at the November meeting. There's really, I think there's just a few minor things that I would want between now and then, and I'll just send it out to you as a group, and then we'll be ready to take action at the November meeting. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on it right now, only because it's already 8:15. You've already been here since 6:30, and I'd like to get you out of here at a decent hour because some nights we go pretty late. So. I think basically you just have, if there's anybody from the board that wants, your commission that wants to make comment, you could do that now. You have public comment, which there are no public here. And then if there's any items that you want to make sure are on the agenda next time, if you tell us, and then we can do adjournment.
Anybody?
I don't have anything.
Any comment? Everybody good? All right. So motion to adjourn?
Does
Are we done?
anybody have anything they want on the agenda for next month or anything? He asked.
Is there anything, I mean, we're going to start working on this. I don't know that we'll have it done before the November. I mean, it probably won't be till the November meeting that we have that done, because we're going to have to get together.
Mhm.
4 of us, and getting 4 people's schedules together is probably more of a challenge than actually doing the work. But we'll start working on it. If it's ready, we'll present it to you in November. If that's.
Could we
okay.
get an advance copy though?
Yes, we'll make sure you get an advance copy. Okay,
Mhm.
so for the purposes, I don't know that I've met with you all since the wall's gone into place related to agenda items. We can't add an agenda item in the middle of the meeting very easily anymore. You can, but it requires a vote. It requires an explanation as to why you're adding it. And then it requires me to repost the agenda again, not only on the website, but also on the door with the explanation of why you did it and who voted for it. And so I've been trying to avoid those like crazy because it's a lot of work on our end to try to do that afterwards. It can happen if it needs to happen and we're okay with it, we'll do whatever has to be done. But we're trying to get all agenda items up front. So Nick does this one, right? And eventually Heather, we hired a new lady in our codes department. She'll be kind of doing this with you or helping you with the agendas going forward. And when she helps you with those, she'll probably be sending out a notice that she's looking for agenda items. We try to do it the Wednesday before the meeting. So not yesterday, but the Wednesday before that, the week before, because we publish on Friday. And so if we have to make a change, we can make it up through Wednesday, but we're really trying to get those things out and knock them all out. We have a process now in place to make it work. And so that's what we're going through. Okay.
Okay. Are we good? Motion to adjourn?
I second it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you all.
Yep.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Yep.